And then continuing with our theme this morning on European regulations, I'd like to introduce Jaromir, who is going to speak to us about his FIDO experiences with eIDAS. So over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. And hello, everybody. It's a really great pleasure and the honor to be here to have an opportunity to share with you what we are doing in Czech Republic with the FIDO. And in my presentation, I will do a lot of references to Heike's presentation. So because I think we share the same issues, the same concerns. So you will have the double. So in my agenda, I will briefly describe what is the eIDAS and how the notification process works. Many of you probably know this, but this is like to get everybody in sync. And then I will talk about what is the eID identity service and how it's using FIDO technology. I will briefly focus on the latest changes, notable changes that happened over last year, how we launched a high level of assurance with the FIDO security keys for the national services in the December last year, and definitely this July when we completed the process of notification of eID via eIDAS. And the core of the presentation will be definitely how the FIDO authenticators are compliant with the eIDAS regulation. So let's go to that. So eIDAS is the European regulation that is actually binding the governments of all the European countries plus 3 countries of European Economic Area. It's Norway, Liechtenstein, and Iceland. And it's effective since 2018. And what it actually says in one sentence is that if some country has some electronic services that are offered to the citizens via national eID, they are obliged to also recognize the eID of the other countries in Europe. So you can immediately see there are 2 parties, 2 sides of this. There is the relying party side or receiving side, which actually mandates that all the relying parties in the country must recognize the eIDs of the other countries that are notified. And on the other side, there's a sending side, the IDP side, that it's not mandated. No country is actually binded to have the eID, so not every country has at the moment the eID. The technical solution is based on the set of mutually interconnected gateways talking to each other with a profile of the SAML protocol to hide the technical differences in each country. So I mentioned notification. It's the way how the country can declare that their eID is fulfilling the requirements. So it imposes restrictions on the eIDs. We already heard that there are 3 levels of assurance: low, substantial, and high. And the fulfillment of those requirements are checked by something which is called peer review group, the group of experts from all other countries that went through the individual requirements and check if the requirements are fulfilled. The source of those requirements, they are in the implementing act to eIDAS. I put a link in the presentation so you can go through all the requirements. The secondary set of requirements, there are the guidelines, how to read the implementing act. It's adding more details. And of course, the previous peer reviews that must be taken into account when the peer review group is comparing different solutions. So what is the current status? The number of countries that have already notified their eID means is slowly but steadily growing. At the moment, it's more than a half, like 18 countries, I think. You can see here on the slide in the yellow that it's Norway, that I'm glad to hear that, because I know they're for a couple of months after the peer review, but they have not notified yet, so which is probably going to happen next week, as Heike mentioned. And right now, there are a peer review process going on other 3 countries, which is Poland, Bulgaria, and Liechtenstein. So maybe this year there will be even more countries that have already notified their eID means. There is a public website where you can check all the countries and all their eID means that are used. Mostly, it's based on the chip cards and mobile applications. Up to this year, there was no FIDO authenticators, which we have changed with our first notification. And definitely some other countries are exploring this area. We have heard a presentation from Norway, but also the Denmark with their mid-ID, they also allow to have the FIDO token as an option to the authentication. And also I have heard that the Austria, they also will probably soon implement the FIDO into the process of authentication. But none of them, they are officially notified yet at the moment, except of the Czech Republic. So let's turn to MojeID. It's the My ID in Czech language. And it's an authentication service operated by CZ.NIC. We are the top-level domain registry in Czech Republic. We are responsible primarily for managing .cz domain. And we built the MojeID on top of the domain owners user base in 2010, mainly because the focus of all the top-level domain registries is now to verify, has been always to verify the identity of the domain owners. So we try to double the effect, like we're verifying the domain owners by giving them opportunity to use also the identity solution with single sign-on to other services. But it's open to any user. So over those 12 years, we've got a couple 100,000 of users, active users per year, 1,000 services. But the big change happened in 2020 when we got the official accreditation for MojeID to be able to be used to access also the governmental services in Czech Republic. In Czech Republic, the eID solution is based on the governmental operated authentication gateway called National Identification Authority, which on one hand, all service providers must use, but commercial identity providers can actually join on the other side if they fulfill the requirements. The drawback on our side was that we have to call all our user base to re-enroll, to again the check verification, check the identity based on the requirements that were linked to these requirements. So at the moment, after those 2 years, we have back like 63,000 users. Its number is growing every month by 2,000. So hopefully, like maybe by the next year, there'll be like 100,000 users. It's not the same like in Norway, but still, like that's at least these people have an opportunity to use FIDO as the most secure way of multi-factor authentication. So we have 2 options for the second factor. It's FIDO certified keys, but also the mobile app. This is just a simple push-based mobile app where you can approve the authentication. For both options, you can have multiple instances, you can have multiple apps, and of course, multiple keys. Here you can see on the graph that when we started in October 2020, we first started with the FIDO keys. People could like verify again with the FIDO key. But after a year, we realized that there are some drawbacks with using the FIDO technology for the regular users. So we need to have the alternative. So we implemented the authentication app like somewhere in the middle last year. And so here you can see we have like something like 70,000 the authentication means, which majority now it's the app. But there is like 26,000 keys that are linked to our accounts. So now those 2 notable changes that we implemented. First was the national accreditation for a level of assurance high. We already got the compliance mark from the government in March 2021, but we had to implement all these differences that we were required to fulfill, like the limitation of scope of the identity verification just for physical checks, or remotely by another eID mean that's also on level of assurance high. And we launched in production in last December. Unfortunately, in Czech Republic, there's only one service that is requiring this highest level of assurance, and that's an opening account on the governmental website if you want to buy some government debts. We talked to the government that there should be soon maybe possible to use this high assurance levels authentication also for getting the qualified certificates, but this is in discussion. And the second notable things I mentioned, this notification according to the eIDAS regulation. This process actually started already in September 2021. And there was the peer review, a lot of questions that we had to answer to the experts from the other countries. And it completed in February 2022. And then we had to wait like a couple months for our government before they officially submitted the notification, which happened in June, and in July we went into the production. So what does it mean for the Czech citizens is that while up to July they only could use the Moje ID with the FIDO tokens to access the governmental services in Czech Republic, now they can use that also to access the governmental services all around Europe, which is great. So now I'm getting to the mapping of the FIDO security properties and the eIDAS requirements. We started in 2020 with the FIDO at LOA substantial, and we had this FIDO tokens as the second factor to username password. I will get why we are passwordless, I will get to that back later. We only allow the FIDO L1 certified keys, and we detect the certification automatically via FIDO metadata service. We only rely on a user-present checks. There is no user verification, to make it simple. So just quick mention about the FIDO certification program. It's a great thing, but it has some drawbacks. We started with the MDS2 in 2020. And unfortunately, at the time, not all the popular authenticators, even though they were certified, they were not present in metadata service. So we had to push them like to go to Google, Microsoft, like please fill the records in the MDS, like we can detect that you have the proper certification. So we managed to that, like they are there, so it's great. Another problem we had is that difference between FIDO2 and U2F protocols. Because there are still some browsers that only speak CTAP1, they don't speak CTAP2, which means that, for example, if I have the FIDO2 tokens and I use it on my Android, I will try to link it to the account. It will only get the U2F attestation. So when I try to match this with the record in the MDS, they must find the record not for FIDO2 protocol, but for U2F protocol. So this is like appeal to all the vendors. If you are thinking certification seriously, publish in a metadata service and publish for both, for FIDO2 and for the U2F, because otherwise it's really hard to find out whether you have proper certification or not. So then there was a migration to MDS3 in 2021. Unfortunately, there was no automated migration. So when we migrated to MDS3, we again had to go to the vendors, like please migrate from MDS2 so we can detect that you have proper certification. And we had some issues also with the unclear interpretation of the specification for metadata service. It's quite unclear how to interpret some records in the MDS because there is a rule of, there is an order of status updates about the certification, and sometimes it's in massed order. But yesterday I talked to Paul, the director of certification. They promised, they hope they will fix that, maybe put some guidelines how to interpret the MDS. So I'm actually really curious if anybody here maybe like is working with MDS. I would like to hear the experience, because that's it takes us a lot of time to get through all these issues. So the question I talked before, we have the only second factor to the username password. So of course we are asked whether user verification can replace the password. Unfortunately, I'm afraid not now. I've already said that there are some browsers like Firefox on Linux and macOS and the Chrome on Android that doesn't speak the CTAP2, so it's not possible, for example, to use the PIN, to ask for the PIN. So until this, and it is really hard like to in the communication with the user to say, you cannot use this browser, you cannot use this browser, you must use this browser. It's not easy. Like so probably this is the obstacle that must be solved before we will get to the full passwordless. And other thing, the eIDAS requirements for the knowledge-based factor for password require some guest protection, which is okay for a CTAP2 protocol. It says like if you have security key, you will type the PIN 5 times, it's locked. But it's not the same for the platform authenticators. They don't have these requirements. The FIDO certification requirements talk about some slowdown protection that must be implemented, but it's not on the same level. So it's hard to say whether it would be possible to just do simple fingerprint authentication and said like that it's compliant, especially for the last bullet, because for example on Android, you don't know what actually the user used for the authentication. There is this screen lock user verification method, and even as a relying party, I cannot distinguish whether the user used the PIN, fingerprint, or the gesture. And you can guess that the gesture has those completely different security properties from the PIN and from the biometrics. And it's not possible to even enforce and not even like find out what the user did. And there are some other things. For example, you cannot actually say what's the hardware, because sometimes the governmental organizations, they were asking, is it like Samsung or is it different mobile? So because there are some issues with some specific things, you cannot find out this information just from the FIDO authentication. You can do that in the mobile app, but you cannot do that with the FIDO. So back to the FIDO now for the level of assurance high. The difference between the substantial requirements for substantial and for high level of assurance, generally it's expected that the high level of assurance should provide some protection against copying of the private key from the key. So we were discussing with the government what should be the properties for this. They said, okay, like it probably should be L3 certification, but we said like there is no L3 certified token like on the market, so why to do something if there is no tool to use it? So then we negotiated something in between, that L2 certification should be okay, but also only those authenticators that have declared that they have the secure element that is common criteria or FIPS certified can be used. So which means that we actually have to check each product separately, ask for some more information, and we have to whitelist all these tokens, security keys that fulfill the requirements. This means we cannot use MDS for that. It would be okay. And of course, and also the government has a little bit like issues with the biometric. Like they probably, if there would be the biometric certification, that would be okay. But unless there is biometric certification, they say like it should be only used with PIN as a user verification method. So you can immediately see like the disadvantages. I already talked about the problem is the Firefox browsers. So from the user perspective, again, like we are trying to say like, please use Chrome, do not use Firefox if something doesn't work for you. If you want to level of assurance high, you have to use this. So this is the reason why there are some things that still need to be fixed in a FIDO user experience. So here's just a statistic of those 23 keys. You may see that like the Windows Hello and Android Authenticator are one of those really popular, and because they are for free, definitely. The most popular is GoTrust IDEM key, which actually at the moment is the only key on the market that fulfills those requirements. And this is like one of the things that is on our list of concerns that we have for the future, because we hope that there will be more L2 certified tokens. At the moment, that would fulfill our requirements. And unfortunately, it's not the case. So I've talked to some vendors here. They are thinking about the L2 certification. So hopefully, it will change in the future. Probably maybe L3 certification would be even better. So yeah, the other concerns already mentioned also that the user experience, like with that. Even with the things like Windows on the Windows Hello on the Windows 10, if we want users to link the security key, like that's for a high assurance level, they actually the first thing that they got offered is Windows Hello, and we must tell them like they click cancel, and they will see a possibility like to link the hardware security key. So this is something that it's hard to explain. People like my grandma, like they have to like do this, like how to link the key. So there is still something that probably I really hope that this whole UX experience, the working group will come out with some good suggestions. The one thing that's quite some important platform authenticators are not certified. And definitely it's iPhones, MacBooks, they don't have certification, Chromebook. And we talked already in a Hacky presentation that the passkeys at the moment are not moving us anyway further. It's actually like a step aside or maybe a step back because we saw that Apple is moving away from attestation. And from the point of view that it's like a shared keys, I wonder whether it would be possible at all to be recognized as the alternative to the normal security keys by governments. So it may replace maybe password, but it will probably not be able to replace the general key that we use. So the last slide, what do we expect from the future? Definitely, we hope that Microsoft and Google will not follow the same path as Apple, that they will still keep the attestations. And because it's an important feature for this regulatory space. This DPK things definitely is probably the way forward. We will follow that. And Heiko also mentioned the eIDAS is under revision. So right now with the eIDAS 2, everything is actually moving from the centralized world to the decentralized world. So we are part of one of those big consortia that is forming for the piloting this ecosystem of eIDAS 2 wallet. We want to know like how we as the IDP with the FIDO could make all the things work with SSI wallet, for example. So I'm looking. There is a lot of presentation here this week about how FIDO and the SSI works together. So I hope I will see some inspirations here. And this is it. Thank you for listening, and I'll be happy to answer questions if you have some.
We have a couple of minutes for questions. So.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I just wanted to ask, you mentioned that the form factors for authentication that are the most used are either a mobile application or the USB key. Have you considered, for example, having a FIDO applet in the national ID card?
We talked about this with our government. They are issuing the citizen card with the chip. That's like classical PKA. You need to card reader. You need to the middleware application, and they seriously consider that to extend the functionality of the citizen card to have the FIDO applet. But I think it hadn't moved further than thinking. I don't know if this will transform to any real things, but for us it's good that we have the alternative to the governmental thing, so we don't push them.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much, Jaromir.
Thank you.